our front part is already cut, so when cutting this on fabric, you please like, share and subscribe to this channel. That's the support I need from you. Chop chop. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and from wherever you're watching from, welcome back to our fashion journey series, where I will be sharing with you the detailed introduction to sewing stroke tailoring. So in today's video, I'm bringing you a practical video where we are going to see a women's wear, and here I will be drafting with you a fitted female pant stroke a trouser using a step-by-step method that I will be sharing with you. So guys, here is the display of our practical measurements that we will be using in this video, as you can see. So these are the measurements I will be using. First, I draw the horizontal line, which will be my trouser waistline, and also this vertical line that will be the initial line for my horizontal measurement placement. So as you can see, I'm done with the drawing of these two lines. The next step is inserting my trouser full length. The trouser full length I'm working with is 38 inches. Now I come to this point. I minus 1.5 inch for the waistband. Then I place the tape measure downwards to mark the trouser full length of 38 inches. So here I mark my 38 inches as the trouser full length, plus 2 inches for my hem allowance. That's after when I'm sewing to fold it inwards, so giving me the total of 40 inches. After, I draw a straight bottom hemline like so. Okay, then the next thing that I will be doing is working on the trouser vertical line placements. I begin by inserting the crotch depth line first. So notice, or some guide, when inserting a crotch depth, there are very many formulas to use, but as for my case, I always use this simple method to calculate the crotch depths. I always get my the hip measurements divided by 4 plus 1 for ease allowance. But you can still use a method of the out seam minus the inseam, giving you the answer, or you can tell your client to sit straight, and then you measure from where where that client wants the trouser to begin from, straight away up to the seat in this image, like the way you see this image here, like this. So you can tell any of the two can work, but as for me, I always go with the other one. So my working hip measurement is 38.75 inches. So I divide it by 4, giving me 9.687 plus 1 inch is allowance, giving me a total of 10.65 inches. But I will just round this up. I will just round this 10.687 to 10.75, like this. Now, still at this point, I minus 1.5 inch for the waistband. Then I mark downwards my 10.75 here, like this. Then after, I square a straight line like so. After, I label still this as my crotch line. The next line is getting the hip depths. From the waistline to the hip line, I always use 8 to 9 inches, but for this 8 to 9 inches for adults, but for this tutorial I'll be using 8.5 inches. So from this point I mark minus 1.5 inches for the waistband, as I said, downwards my 8.5. I'll square a straight line like this. Then still I also label this as my hip line. the next line, after getting my hip depth line, I will still proceed in getting my knee line. To get the knee line, I use this simple method. I measure from the crotch line to the bottom hem line. I divide the measurements by 2, then I subtract 2.5 inches, giving me the answer. So for this tutorial or for this video, my crotch to the hem line is 27.4 inches. I divide it by 2, giving me 13.2 minus 2.5, giving me 11.25. Then I square a straight line. Like this. Then also I label it as the knee line. Guys, as you can see, I'm done with the vertical line placement. Now the next step is inserting my horizontal body measurements to these lines. So straight away, begin with this crotch depth line. I insert the hip measurements, divide by 4 plus 2.5 inches for the crotch extension, giving me the answer. So for this tutorial, my hip measurements is 38.75. I divide it by 4, giving me 9.687 plus 2.5 inches, giving me a total of 12. I just round it up to 12.25. Now I mark my 12.25 here. Then from this 12.25, I mark inwards 2 inches for the crotch with this. After, I square this point with a straight line across up to the waistline like this. The next step is getting the midpoint for the middle grain line. I come at this point, I measure this distance to this crotch extension point, then I divide it by 2, giving me the answer. So for this working tutorial, I have 12.25 divided by 2, giving me 6.125. Now I mark the midpoint here after I square a straight line across towards the waistline and towards the bottom hem allowance line. Now the next is I come at this point of the middle line. I mark downwards the hip measurement divided by 12. That is 38.75 divided by 12, giving me 3.2. Then from this point, I draw a diagonal straight line passing through this point like so. Then from this point through this diagonal line, I mark upwards my hip measurements divided by 6, which is 38.75 divided by 6, giving me 6.4 inches to get the crotch curve point. After I connect this point to this point in a curved way to create a perfect crotch curve line, as you can see. The crotch curve line is done. Wow, I like it. You see how it is? It has already taken its shape. Then the next step is inserting the round knee measurements. I come to this point, I mark the knee. I come to this point, I mark the knee divided by 4, that is 17 divided by 4, giving me 4 1/4. So I mark here my 4 1/4, and also this side I mark 4 1/4. Now I come at the hem line. At this point I mark my bottom opening. The bottom opening I divide it by 4. That is, the bottom opening for my tutorial is 13.5 inches. I divide it by 4, giving me 3.3. So I mark this side 3.3. Also this side I mark 3.3. Guys, this is a fitted pencil trouser. I want it to fit my client perfectly. So a launcher, I come at the hem line, not the hem allowance line. I mark upwards 5.5 inches. So from this 5.5, I square a straight line like so. After, what I got here is what I transfer to this new fitted line. So here I still mark 3.3 on both sides like this. Then the last but not the least, I connect these points to this point and to this point across to the hem allowance line like so. Also, I come to this side. Also, I connect these points together like this. Wow, as you can see, our trouser is already taking shape. Now, the next step is inserting my waist measurements. Point of notice: if you are going to insert elastic or a rope at the waistline, there is no need for you to shape the waist. Just leave it in this way, because when you shape the waist, when you've already inserted your elastic, it will not pass via the hip line. So you need to leave it in this format so that it passes via the hip like that. But for my case, I'm going to insert the zipper, so I have to shape the waistline. Now I come to the waistline. At this point, from this side, I insert my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch, that allowance. That's my client's waist is 29. I divide it by 4, giving me 7 1/4 plus 1 inch for that allowance, giving me a total of 8 1/4 inches. After, I connect this point to this point to create a curve around the hip area. A guide: if you don't have a hip curve ruler like the way I do, you come to this point, you mark 2 inches upwards, then you connect this point to this point like this. Now, to create a perfect fit for the waistline, I come to this point, I mark downward 3/4 or 0.75 like this, and then I create a new waistline like so. Don't forget, you will be joining this block to the waistband, so you need to add seam allowance of 0.5 inches here like this. So I'm done with the drafting of the front pattern. Now the last step is to trim this pattern off like this. Okay, chap guys, our front part is already cut. So when cutting this on fabric, you cut 2 pieces of it, one for the left, one for the right. So we are going to you will be using this to cut our back part. We are going just to make some adjustments. From this we do some extension so that we get the measurements of our back. So ladies and gentlemen, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. That's the support I need from you. Yes, check 1 2. Yes guys, I've just realized that my camera stopped working when I was making adjustments on the back part, but nevertheless, let me explain these lines point after point. So as you can see, I redrew these vertical lines all the way to the bottom hemline. Then here at the crotch line, I came downwards by a ½ inch to get the new back crotch line. This a ½ inch downward crotch movement enables the trouser or the pant to fit the client very well without showing any bulkiness. Then also from this point I extended the back crotch extension by 2½ inches. At this knee line, I extended it also by 2 inches. Also at the trouser fitting line, I extended it by 2 inches all the way to the hem allowance line. Then I came to the crotch rise, rise line. At this point, I moved inwards 1½ inch. Then I redrew a vertical, I drew a vertical line like so. After, from this point, I marked 2 inches to this point, but you can still go upwards by 1½ inch depending on your client's shape. But as for me, in this tutorial, I moved upwards by 2 inches. This 2 inch up movement enables the trouser not to show from the behind when you sit, so it covers it very well. So that's another logic. So guys, another step after that, what I got here is what I transferred to this new back waistline. Then I added 1½ inch. Then I connected this point to this point all the way to the hem allowance line like that. After, I divided this point to this point by 2 inches, by 2 to get this midpoint. Then from this midpoint is where I am going to create my back crotch line rise. So I joined this with, a straight line like so. After using my freehand, I draw a back crotch curved line connecting to this point in this way. But if you have a curved ruler, you can utilize it, but as for me, I don't have, so I always use a freehand to do this. And even there is another one outside there who is like me, who doesn't have these rulers, so you can learn from me. You connect it in this way. As you can see, the back part development is already taking shape. Then the last thing I'm going to do is trimming off my back part pattern like this. Yes. Wow, we are done with everything. Just now what is left is adding some small things and separating the front panel from the back part. Then after, I insert the trouser back dart. For the back dart, I measure my pattern from here up to here, then I divide it by 2, giving me the midpoint answer. For this tutorial's case, this measurement is 10 inches. I divide it by 2, giving me 5. So I mark my dart midpoint here like this. I mark downwards the dart length of 3.5 inches. Then I connect this to this with a straight line. So remember, our dart intake that I added was 1 inch. Now I divide 1 inch into 2, giving me a ½ inch. Then I mark a half on this side, then also a ½ inch on this side. I connect these points in this way to create the dart legs. So this is our back part. You cut these 2 pieces on fabric. Also on the front part, I insert the front side pocket. I come here at this point, I mark inwards 2 inches for my pocket width, and also the pocket depth is 7 inches. After, I connect these points like this to create the pocket cut line. Also, don't forget, I added a 1 inch allowance for the dart at the waistline. So I come at this point, I mark a ½ inch intake on both sides like this. Then I mark downwards 4 inches for my dart length or dart depth. After, I connect also this to this in this way to create my dart legs. Guys, this pattern is for a trouser with a zipper. So the depth for my fly is 6 inches. So I notch my 6 inches from here to this point like this. Wow. Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our project tutorial. If you have seen this video helpful to you, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up or a like, share, and also subscribe to this channel for more important fashion videos of the same. Wow. See you in my next video. Bye bye. God bless you all. Shalom. Yes, thank you so much for supporting Top Stitch Tailoring Studio. You're the reason as to why I am doing this. So let us go back to the editing side.